Can a show like Maul Shadow Lord do something really deep, even though it seems like it mostly might be action and character development? Yes, 100%. Show is fantastic. I really recommend, if you enjoy Star Wars, watching this. It's one of the best things they've done, not just in terms of animation, but just as a Star Wars show in general. So, welcome to Philosophy All Along. I'm a professional philosopher, and I like to use the tools of philosophy to help me understand the things I love, like Star Wars, on a deeper level. So here, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time with spoilers. If you haven't seen it or haven't seen it to the end, you're probably pretty good. I'm just going to say it's good and it's worth it. And so let's look at 3 things real quickly that if you haven't seen it, or if you have seen it and want to think more about it, might make it even deeper or more interesting. One is the fact that Star Wars has shown an unerring ability to kind of make the cheese worth it. There are so many times, if you think about it, that there's pretty cheesy things in Star Wars, and yet somehow they usually really make it worth it by the end. Maul is a great example of that. Don't get me wrong, when Darth Maul was first introduced in Phantom Menace, fantastic, interesting character with a lot of potential depth. But then they did the whole thing where they kind of like brought him back and gave him spider legs. And I don't know about you, but for me, that was a little bit like, okay, maybe is this kind of a bit of fan service, just wanting to bring back a cool character. But this show makes it worth it, 100%. And Star Wars really just does that, I think, really well. Probably in part because part of the appeal of Star Wars is to the young, to kids. You know, when I watched it, I had no problem with Ewoks because I was a little kid. Sometimes as adults, we watch it, we expect Star Wars to always have to be somehow kind of like Andor, like thoughtful and dark and gritty and saying something politically significant. But a lot of it really is just this fun fantasy world to play in that appeals to children. It's part of why it informs who we are today when we grow up with it. And so they really have done, I think, a fantastic job of this balancing act of taking these things that kids enjoy and they're just glad to see, ooh, Darth Maul is back and he's got spider legs. But for those of us who want something that really has a kind of final, amazing jolt to it, moments like this make it worthwhile. So definitely worth watching it. So what are some of the deeper things they hit on? So one is the continuing to address a bit of what was touched on in The Acolyte. And I know that for some of you, that's not a super popular show, but I think it was really a great start. I think it had places to go. And that's one of the things that we have to allow for in Star Wars. To my previous point, right? That sometimes it doesn't always start somewhere that I'm going to buy into it. But Jar Jar Binks eventually leads to Darth Jar Jar in the Lego Rebuilding the Galaxy, and okay, I'll take it. So here we have the Acolyte leaning into this yin and yang, the idea that the Force has kind of not just 2 sides, but they can interplay. We saw that in the Clone Wars as well. And heck, we even see that in the original trilogy. We see that in The Last Jedi. But here we really start to see the payoff of this idea that the yin and yang, or the light side and the dark side, are a little bit more connected to Chinese philosophy than we might think. And what I mean by that is yin-yang is not just this idea of like dark side, light side, or something like that. The actual idea in Chinese philosophy is that you have the sunny side and the shadow side of the mountain, the light side and the dark side of the mountain. And so it isn't a matter of the yin is always one thing and the yang is always the other. It's actually more a matter of where is the sun positioned when you're looking at the mountain. And so right now, maybe the yang and the light side is over here, but as the sun moves, it might be over there. And so we've shifted from the yang to the yin. So here in Maul Shadow Lord, you see that kind of idea of not just, the idea of a gray Jedi, someone who's somehow willing to do middle ground things. No, they've left that aside, and it's probably for the best. It's more a matter of a certain point of view. From Maul's point of view, he's not necessarily a bad guy. He's rejected the Sith. If anything, he wants to take down Darth Sidious for betraying him. So he sees very real reason to align himself with Jedi, but he thinks that he sees, from his perspective, a massive set of flaws on the part of the Jedi, ways in which that they've held themselves back, that they prevented themselves from being able to beat an opponent who knows and understands them, like someone like Palpatine, someone like Anakin Skywalker, people who in fact know the Jedi or are part of the Jedi Order, are deeply involved in a set of lore that the Jedi are just not prepared for or not being honest with themselves about. And so Maul Shadow Lord really plays with that a bit, not in terms of the philosophy of it, but in terms of the character development. And so we see that as he's trying to pull in this apprentice, this appeal to the idea of maybe what you're missing is from a certain point of view, and that the shadow side isn't always just this person. And it speaks brilliantly, I think, to the problem of things like the DARE program. I don't know if you remember that, if you're old enough for the DARE program, but basically this problem of telling little kids, telling children, people coming up through middle school, okay, all drugs in all cases are always bad and they're going to destroy your life. That first hit of any drug, boom, you're addicted, your life is destroyed, you're going to be expelled from school, so on and so forth. And what they found is that kids who went through the DARE program, who were being exposed to this idea like, oh, these drugs are just going to destroy your life from the beginning, it's a downhill, dark side slope, right? Like once you tread that path, you can never come back. It was less effective. Children who went through the DARE program were actually more likely to try drugs or to become addicted to them. And what you realize is part of the reason why is because they would see that, oh, they saw someone who tried something and they tried it once and they were fine, or they only were a very recreational user, or themselves they tried it and they were okay. And so they started to feel a bit like there was a lie here. So not only did it create kind of a temptation, but it also created okay, well, if I do try it because I'm being a little rebellious, wait a minute, my life wasn't destroyed. Maybe everything that they're saying is a lie. And that ended up being a false conclusion. There are a lot of problems to a lot of drugs. And I think you see the same thing happen here as Maul is trying to engage Devon, and this problem of, well, are these Jedi being honest? Is what she's learned about the Sith and about people like Maul specifically, is it true how evil and how nothing they do, nothing they ever touch could ever be a good thing or lead to a good result? So if she sees that maybe Maul can sometimes be effective, or maybe sometimes he can do a good thing, that throws into question everything else that she's learned from the Jedi and makes her more susceptible to going down the dark path than had there just been a bit more honesty from the part of the Jedi. And I think that's something that we all know is a problem with the Jedi, the extremes. And Maul is touching on that in a really effective way. And that leads to the thing that I think the show does especially well. And by the way, if you've gotten this far, thank you so much. Please do like and subscribe, share what I'm doing with others, just trying to grow the channel. I really appreciate you. So the show is giving us an opportunity to explore what happens to those who want to follow the law in a world in which the Empire and people like Palpatine have come into power. People who themselves, as dictators, as authoritarians, are saying, no, we believe in law and order as well. So I think it's actually a very politically charged show in a very, very subtle way. There's a lot of places in the world right now where authoritarians are coming into power. People are like, we want a leader who's going to bring us law and order. They're just going to be kind of the final say in things. And what we're failing to recognize is how that power, that once that person has it, the law no longer applies to them or to anyone that they don't want it to apply to. So this you get, it's a little, if anything, on the nose. It's a little cheesy, the fact that the main characters who are engaged in the law are literally named Lawson, right? So we have Lawson and his son, Lawson. So literally the son of the law. So that suggests that in watching the show that we should be aware of the fact that these are people who are either, like in the case of Lawson, someone who in fact believes in the law, at least to some extent, is a participant in it, is a child of it by virtue of being a detective. And his son is literally the son of that world, of that idea. But what he's about to inherit is a whole new world in which the law no longer applies, which is supposed to create order actually results, especially in the Outer Rim, in all of these lawless spaces. And Maul is showing us why. This show is showing us that people like Two Boots. So you have a droid who really believes in protocol, who really believes that there are specific rules that you're supposed to follow. And if you follow those rules, it will work out. And what we see that droid learning, what we see him learning through this is, oh, this is not actually the case. We follow the rules, but once we have someone who can break the rules because they are the sole arbiter of the rules no longer apply. And so Two Boots really has to struggle with that. We see Lawson himself struggling a bit, but he's already a little bit a more morally gray character, kind of this person who's potentially having an affair. We don't know for sure. But this idea that he's working within the realm of the law and is quickly realizing it no longer applies, even though he's being told there's more order. But Two Boots is absolutely perfect for this. His exploration and growth, development, and challenges as a result of following the law, he's starting to realize there really isn't a law, that the idea of too much order is in fact a way of creating lawlessness. And the person who is going to inherit this is Lawson, the son, right? Lawson's son. The whole idea there being one in which we're going to see how people kind of like Han Solo happen. Kind of children of a world in which the law doesn't really apply. And in fact, morality is now separate from the law, whereas they used to be somehow connected. Once you have one authoritarian, once you have one person in power, it is no longer a moral consensus. It's no longer a moral community. It is a decision made by one person who decides what's right or wrong, and they construct the law in that way, and they can contradict it anytime they want, make any exception for themselves or anyone that they want, and apply it in any way to anyone else in any way that they want. And so you have moral characters who probably want to do right, finding themselves having to do wrong, at least from the perspective of the law, from the Empire's rules and regulations, in order to do right. And so Maul Shadow Lord shows us how it happens, walks us through it. It's very smart, definitely worth the watch, probably worth the rewatch with some of these realizations in mind. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time to watch, and I hope you have a wonderful day.